Well, hello, Gig Harbor Film Festival fans and supporters. My name is Matt Haver, and welcome to another episode of our artist interview series. Up next in our Monday movie night series at the Galaxy Theater on March 31st, we'll be screening a captivating and award-winning documentary about the music business and one of its biggest, pardon the pun, unsung heroes, songwriter Diane Warren. Diane Warren Relentless showcases the remarkable career of its namesake, a name many of us may not have heard before seeing the film, but it's guaranteed that we've heard one of the numerous hit songs she's written for over 450 recording artists, or perhaps in the 150 movies her songs have graced, earning her 15 Oscar nominations. Diane's music catalog is worth over $500 million, and she received an honorary Oscar in 2022. And since films and filmmaking are what we're here to talk about, I'm so pleased to welcome the director of the documentary and also one of the producers, Bess Kargman. Bess is a critically acclaimed director, producer, and editor. Most recently, she won a 2021 Producers Guild Award and was nominated for an Emmy and Critics' Choice Award. Along with Diane Warren Relentless, which won the Best of the Fest at the Palm Springs Film Festival, her credits include First Position, Defying Gravity, and ESPN's Coach, which won the jury prize at Tribeca and was nominated for a Sports Emmy. Bess, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
So one of my favorite parts of the film is when Diane says very adamantly, "Don't ask about the process." And that's exactly what I'm here to do. So I hope you're okay with that.
Sure.
All right. So we talked a little bit about give a little intro to your career, but maybe you can tell us a little bit about the path that led you to documentary filmmaking, and then how you got involved with this very cool project specifically.
Well, I began as I think a storyteller from the beginning. I have pictures of myself holding a camera at the age of 4. So those pictures were fun to come across. I didn't quite realize that, it, you know, this passion started even younger than I anticipated. And I knew that I wanted to do visual arts. That was my focus as an undergrad at Amherst College, but I didn't quite know which lane to take. I really loved National Public Radio, which isn't visual, right? But it taught me of the importance of sort of audio stories. So I did photography. I studied art history. I did a lot of audio recording. I didn't quite know what I wanted to do for a long time. So I guess that's what your late teens and early 20s are for, to
Indeed.
figure out what you don't want to do just as much as what you do want to do. And then when I was in graduate school at Columbia, graduate school of journalism, I took a class. I always thought I was going to do the NPR This American Life track. And then I took a class in my final semester on documentary directing, and I was just totally hooked. It changed my life. So from that point forward, even though media companies, production companies thought it was a career change, from journalism to documentary storytelling, and it's definitely not a career change. A story is a story. The principles of, access is everything, and story's only as good as its characters all remain the same. But it was considered a career change, so I really had to work from the bottom at production companies to make it as a director, and that's where I am today.
And yet you've done some stuff specifically in sports, and so like you said, story's a story, but this is so focused on the music business. Did you know Diane through previous work, or how'd you get looped into this documentary?
So what's interesting is I did not know Diane at all. I knew of her music. I mean, if you Google Diane Warren,
Right.
you'll be very, very surprised. You might not know her name, but you know all of her hits, which keep coming out. I mean, she has this great song with Taylor Swift that came out like half a year ago. So, but I had sung Rhythm of the Night, her first hit, a cappella in college, which is pretty funny. So I had heard her name, but this was one of those lucky situations where they were interviewing directors, and I really fought to be the one chosen to direct this. she didn't choose, it was the production company, XTR, which, was interviewing directors, and I really made sure it had to be mine.
Well, the film doesn't just speak to Diane's career, which is, I mean, immense, doesn't even really cover it. But it covers her whole life, from childhood to today. She's still so incredibly active. And so much of her childhood went into the music she wrote. But you're talking about interviews with dozens of colleagues, friends, folks that she grew up with, family members, and then literally the biggest musicians of the last half century. So, how long did this project take to complete?
That's a great question. It took a really long time.
I'll bet.
It was um 3 years,
Wow.
frankly. Yeah. There were moments of pause. We started really before Diane had even been vaccinated. So there were all these protocols regarding, there were our first shoots, I had to do the audio and even some of the filming myself because we weren't allowed a lot of people. So it was a slower process than maybe normally, normal, but it definitely helped us to take 3 years because all of these interesting things transpired in her life that wouldn't have happened had we only filmed with her a year. So.
I'm curious when it comes to actually the film opens on Cher. When it comes to interviewing someone like her or writing, for the interview, the person who's going to be speaking with her in person, this is a longtime friend of Diane's, a legend. Do you go in with a series of specific questions, or when you're talking about someone who's known, in this case, Diane, for decades, is it like, hey, just, reminisce a little bit?
Well, I always start my interviews saying this is going to be like a conversation between two friends,
Hmm.
not formal whatsoever. Typically, maybe it takes 10 minutes to get to that place of informality, but then as the interview goes along and they feel like a feedback, it's like an emotional feedback almost, right? Like they see I'm really, really listening because I do. I'm not really thinking about my questions. I'm thinking about what they're saying and then pivoting according to the new information that they're giving me. And so as a result, sometimes I just see where the interview takes us, but I do know in advance sort of what I need to get out of the person, like what their purpose is for the interview, right?
Hmm.
What's like for Cher, I wanted to hear all of these stories that nobody had ever, told about Diane convincing her to want to do the song and Cher saying it's the worst song. I don't want to sing, Turn Back Time. I hate it, and then basically having a physical fight over recording it. Little stories like that are just such nuggets. And so, really, it has to do with really listening to the person as they answer the questions, which I write out in advance, but then being okay with the idea of like, oh, I didn't know that. Let me pivot and ask more about that. So sometimes I even say to the people I'm interviewing, is there anything, I say this at the end, is there anything I've forgotten to ask you that I wouldn't even know, or I wouldn't even know to ask you about? Any stories or anecdotes? Take a minute and just think, what have I left out? And sometimes we get golden nuggets from that moment too.
Well, it's something that you spent a lot of time interviewing Diane herself, obviously, and something that jumped out was that a lot of the subject matter that she shares, she wasn't really thrilled to be talking about. Um, isn't someone who's real verbose or love crowds, it doesn't like the attention focused on her. When when you reach those moments with someone, and here it is, this is a film about her, but these questions are getting a little bit close to the bone. How do you handle those types of situations when something touchy or kind of troubling comes up, or maybe a subject's hesitant to communicate?
Well, I always leave the toughest questions for the final interview. Once the
Mm,
person really knows my intentions, which are pure, it's to tell a story with accuracy. And once I've earned their trust, then I do feel like there's a space and a place where I can take them, where we're talking about the harder things. But it's a great question. I think that sometimes documenting someone's uncomfortableness, being asked to talk about something, is just as interesting. So I would
mm.
never like cut. This person doesn't want me to ask about this.
Right.
Let's not go. Even I knew like just showing her diversion away from a question or her becoming flippant, right, was interesting too.
Yeah, the message
So
is in
some
the
of that we kept
silence.
in the
Yeah.
film, you know.
Is there anything that you learned about the filmmaking process from just trying to capture such an immense story like this and such an immense career?
I think that editing a film that has so much footage, we not only do we have so much footage, that we shot with her, but also think about how many music videos. And, she's been doing press since she was like 29 years old. So it's all this archival. There's just so much stuff. I think what I learned is to not get bogged down in just the plethora of options that we had at our disposal, and even like plot points, like there are a lot of things that got cut out of the film, stuff I love, but no one wants to watch a 3 hour documentary. And I think the way we know it's the right length is people say like, oh, I wish it had been like a tiny bit longer. And then you're like, yes, that's the perfect length, right?
Get
So
that director's cut.
yeah, seriously. I don't think I haven't been thinking about that. But I do think at the end of the day, no one knows what got cut out.
Mhm.
Only I do. Therefore, it only really means a lot to me, matters to me. But I think that, like, for example, we had like this great whole side story about Diane working with Whitney Houston and all this stuff. And it was beautiful, but it didn't push the story forward. Um, it showing her like you can only, and maybe I'm not really articulating this well, but when you have so much great stuff, you really have to just only use the stuff that pushes the story forward, that the audience really needs to know and experience and feel. And so yeah, I learned that you got to get rid of stuff you love, even if you don't want to, if it doesn't push the story forward.
Was there a certain moment in the process of making this film, or maybe just interacting with Diane or one of the other guests that will really stick with you?
Um, well, Cher being so humble
Mm.
and funny and irreverent was fabulous.
Yeah.
Um, we were like out of time, and I got signals that like it's time to wrap it up,
Yeah.
and I was like, I just said to her, I'm told not to ask, but I really I know we're out of time, but I'd really love you to do a phone call with Diane on camera.
That was a great
She
moment.
was like, I'll tell you if I don't want to do something. Call her up. It was just great. She was very real. And sometimes it's actually the most famous people you interview who are the most normal and real. And I think, they appreciate people who treat them normal and
Hmm.
real, which
Absolutely.
is not something they experience a lot. A lot of people are putting them up on pedestals and telling them everything they want to hear. And sometimes, I'll have to say to someone really famous, you know, can you say that again? But call people by their full names,
Mm.
because the person will be so famous that they'll say, like, and then Steven called, but I told him, that Tom's not available. And I'm like, could you say Steven Spielberg and Tom Hanks?
Right.
Because I know to you, it's Steven and Tom, but to the rest of us. So, and then they actually appreciate that. They're like, wow, you're right. Thank you for calling me out on that. So I try and have people, no matter how famous they are, be treated like they're just normal humans. And Cher was one of those people who I just, I thought she was fabulous. And I thought it was fabulous that she wanted to be treated like a normal human and didn't want any special treatment from me. It was
Mm.
cool.
Yeah, that is very, it's always nice to meet people and have them be the way you would hope.
Hmm.
Yeah. So tons of celebrities featured in this, tons of music. I was like walking back through the decades as these music videos played and all this unforgettable these songs from different points of my life. I know our audience is really going to love it and connect with a lot of this content. Now, I want to know we're screening it here in a couple weeks here in Gig Harbor. Sounds like you're off to the Boulder Film Festival next, and then what's on the horizon for the film?
It's a great question. So, yes, this weekend we are at the Boulder Film Festival. There's a bunch of film festivals that are really excited about playing the film. Right now, also, and for the next couple of months, it's on Masterclass,
Right.
which is now this amazing streaming platform that is buying documentaries. So we're really excited to be one of their first ever
Yeah, so cool.
documentaries.
So congratulations.
Thank you. On Masterclass, and then May 20th, it goes wide to like all VOD platforms.
Great.
Um, and so after May 20th, people outside of the Masterclass subscribership, which by the way is enormous, so that's
Hmm.
very exciting. Everyone else outside of that can see the film on VOD.
Oh, that's good news. And how about for you? What projects are coming up for you? What are you working on next? And of course, how can our viewers keep up with your work?
You're very sweet. So we just moved, and even though I live in Los Angeles, even though we only moved a mile, um, our house needs some work. So I've been working on painting and
Fun.
uh, trying to become handy. And we hung drapes today. We had no, look, I have no window treatments.
Hey, that's
Um,
that's an accomplishment in and of itself.
so I'm taking a minute to do that. And also, I'm still touring. Like I was at the Boca Film Festival very recently. I'm still touring with the film. But I'm chomping at the bit to start a new project. So, you got any great ideas?
All
Let
right.
me know.
That sounds good. Well, again, if you can't wait until the 31st, Diane Warren Relentless can be seen as part of the Masterclass catalog and then coming to a streaming service near you shortly thereafter. We'll be screening it on our next Monday movie night series at Gig Harbor Galaxy Theater on March 31st at 6:30 p.m. You can get tickets at galaxytheaters.com. Bess, thank you so much for your time. This has been a wonderful conversation. Best of luck with your drapes and of course, with the future of Diane Warren Relentless. And please give her our best from out here in the Northwest.
Thank you so much. This was great.